Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and construction expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living it. Real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Pacific Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm Joel Pollack, here with Ron Goldschmidt and Oren Ezra, and our very special guest, Elaine Culotti, who's going to be joining us from Castellamare, of all places. This is the first time we've ever had a guest who is actually in the Pacific Palisades. Elaine, before we bring you in later on in a formal fashion, say hello, and how is life back home?
Hi, and I'm a refugee. I snuck in. There's
you snuck in.
Walk in. Yeah, I wanted to see if I could podcast without Wi-Fi.
Oh my goodness! So you're on the cell signal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, well, let's talk about some news before we dive into our topic this evening. We're going to talk this evening about the real estate market again, but specifically focusing on a tax measure that passed a couple of years ago called Measure ULA or Measure ULA, which is a transfer tax, and it could be holding back the rebuilding effort in Pacific Palisades. So Elaine's going to talk to us about that and also about the possible future of the Pacific Palisades as a private-public partnership. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's go through some news. A few interesting news stories, ladies and gentlemen. The first is that Fire Chief Kristen Crowley is contesting her dismissal. She was fired on Friday, February 21st by Mayor Karen Bass, and now she is appealing to the city council to reinstate her. She has the opportunity to do that. She has to win 2/3 of the vote to get her job back, and Karen Bass is not saying much about it because Karen Bass has a lot of problems right now, but it's interesting, this fight is not over. It began days after the fire when the fire chief said that they didn't have the funding to deploy the firefighters before the fire. They didn't have the engines they needed. They didn't have the maintenance staff they needed. Karen Bass hit back. Then they buried the hatchet for a while. Then Karen Bass tried to throw the fire chief under the bus, claimed that she hadn't told her not to take a vacation or to go to Ghana ahead of the wind event. So this reemerged, this feud over who was responsible, and Karen Bass fired Kristen Crowley. Then Rick Caruso, who we'll talk about a little bit later, stepped in and said that the mayor should have taken accountability or responsibility herself. And that's where we are. This fight continues. Meanwhile, people are still struggling to rebuild. So it's starting to become a costly distraction, you could say. But we'll talk about that if you guys want to get into it. A couple other news items. Karen Bass, speaking of, has a couple of allies in the state capitol. The state legislature is going to consider a bill that would make it unlawful for private firefighting companies to tap into public hydrants. And this is a piece of legislation called AB 1075, sponsored by Assembly members Isaac Bryan and Tina McKinner, both Democrats from the LA area. And they are close allies of Mayor Karen Bass, according to Politico. They have this bill. I've read it. It's very short. And it basically says if you are a private firefighting company, you cannot plug into the hydrants. It's a direct shot, or maybe an indirect shot, at Rick Caruso, who used private firefighting to defend the Palisades Village Mall. And there were other private firefighters up in the Palisades during the fire, some of whom may have saved some houses on my block, actually. And it's an attempt to get at them, although most of the firefighters that we saw who were working for private companies seemed to have their own water tankers. I don't think they were filling them from the hydrants because you couldn't get water from the hydrants anyway, but they were filling them somewhere else and then driving into the Palisades. So I don't know if the bill would actually do anything, but it is interesting that that's the priority up there in Sacramento. Of all the other things they could be doing to help fire victims, that's what they're doing, targeting private firefighting companies, including, one presumes, the one that helped Rick Caruso. And then finally, some happy news. The Pacific Palisades Baseball Association Little League season kicks off this weekend, Saturday, March 1st. It has relocated to Cheviot Hills, and they will be having the traditional pancake breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, followed by a day of baseball. And really have to hand it to Bob Benton and all of the people who organize the league. My son is on the Mustang Dodgers. He's in the 9 and under division, and he will also, I think, be moving up for a game to play with one of the Bronco teams because they're short a player. So the season is kicking off, and we went to a practice game tonight full of enthusiasm. The kids are just so happy to play together, to see each other, to have some fun together, to reunite. People are scattered all over LA, but the Pacific Palisades Baseball Association season is happening. So that much of life is continuing in Pacific Palisades. And of course, Elaine is up there in Castellamare, so she's continuing in Pacific Palisades. There are a few people over there, and we'll talk about that. But let me go to Ron and Oren, if you guys have anything you want to mention that you've seen in the news, and then we'll kick it off with Elaine.
I just want to share the fact that I've been driving up and down PCH this week and just seeing like the grass beginning to grow right after the rains is making me very happy. And it's just maybe a sign of like everybody's renewal and hope. I know it's less than 2 months after the fire, but just even that small thing has been making me happy this week. So nothing to comment on the news. I think it's all par for the course. It's all tone deaf nonsense from the politicians still. But let's save that for later. I don't want to get mad. I want to be happy today. So let's just talk about the grass.
Okay, great. I'll get mad for you, Ron. And I'm still on the same topic on the debris removal. There has been,
it's a problem.
It's a problem. Listen, it's like I'm still on it. I'm still like spending like every day probably 2-3 hours. I'm refusing to pay $60,000 or have my insurance company pay $60,000 for something that should have cost like $15,000 to $20,000 because there was like so many mistakes on the fire, and now nobody's know how to handle it. I think that like, I can easily, I have my on my debris removal, I have $45,000. I could easily sign in and forget about it. But I think that like us again as a community, they're trying to rebuild and thinking of like which insurance companies we're going to have over here. Who is going to insure us and give us insurance, and like I don't know, like we have to find a solution for it. Ron already told me this week, hey, you know what, let's pay whatever it is, let's start working and clearing our lots. I said no, like it's not fair that because of the same people that the fire happened because of them, now we need to pay double, triple, or if we're not paying, somebody is going to pay for it. Now, if it's FEMA, and that's what I'm trying to understand, if FEMA is bringing the Army Corps and they're clearing all the lots and the city is taking the money. So we talked about it, I think, since like the first episode. So where is the money ending up? And that's
So before we go any further, I think I should introduce Elaine, or allow her to introduce herself, because she and I actually had a very interesting conversation the other day about debris removal. And also to tease one of the later shows, speaking of debris removal, since so much of it is handled by LA County, we are actually going to have Lindsay Horvath on the show at some point next week. She's agreed to come on, Three Homeless Guys. And I'm going to be speaking to another member of the Board of Supervisors, Catherine Barger, has agreed to speak, although she wants to pre-tape the interview very early in the morning because that's the only time she can do it. So we'll be speaking to the supervisors, and I will raise some of these questions. But Elaine, why don't you introduce yourself? And I said we'd talk about Measure ULA and we'd talk about the private-public partnership, but Oren brings up a good point, which is debris removal, and you have something to say about that as well. So introduce us to your illustrious career, your beautiful home, if you want to give us a tour without Wi-Fi. But tell us about yourself, and then I want to hear your spiel about debris removal because you know a lot about it.
Okay, so hi, I'm Elaine Culotti. I've been in California since 1991, so I consider myself a native. I've lived most of my life here in this neighborhood and in Santa Monica, raised all my kids here. I'm a developer, I wasn't always a developer. I worked in big construction, but I've been, building homes and some public space and businesses in the Palisades for about 30 years. And I have a lot of property. I'd say 70% of my portfolio is in the Palisades, which is substantial. And I know a lot about the debris removal, but I know it from a different standpoint than most people understand it. My best guess on day one was 1,650,000 trucks needs to be removed from the Pacific Palisades. I haven't heard anyone say that. I did hear Rick Caruso the other night say 1,000 or 1 million trucks. I think he's off. I think he's wrong. It's more than that. And that is something that we all really need to take a look at, because we don't have any landfills that can hold that kind of debris. So the current MATOC, which, if you don't know what that is, a MATOC it's a work order document. And FEMA and lots of large emergency response, organizations have to have a MATOC. Because if you didn't have one, then if there was an emergency, you'd have to start the calling rather than the deploying. So you already have a team in place. And so the Army Corps of Engineers is under the MATOC under a company called ECC. And I'm sure you guys have seen them up in the Palisades driving around. ECC trucks everywhere. They're a small company, but they're the kind of landing of all the dollars that come from FEMA. And those dollars are distributed to the Army Corps of Engineers from FEMA. That's how it goes. It goes government, FEMA, ECC, Army Corps of Engineers, or multiple other contracts. So the MATOC, it's a multiple award task order contract. That's what it means. And the current situation is, you guys were all told if you had insurance, you could opt in. Remember, opt in. And if you opted in, they would come and clear your lot, and then you could opt out by March 31st if you didn't want to do it. Are you all aware of that?
Yeah.
So my concern of what's really on my radar today, almost more than anything, is that it's my understanding 1,400 homes have been started for clearance. They're simple lots, flat lots, lots to kind of, where you can put a television camera and talk about clearing. 1,400. There's 8,800 lots in the pipeline to be cleared that have not been approved to be cleared. If those lots do not get cleared by March 31st and you don't opt out, your insurance goes to the Army Corps of Engineers anyway. And if you're not on the schedule to be cleared and you only have your insurance as your negotiating point, my concern is you won't get your lot cleared for a year. Because as I stated, it's 1,650,000 trucks. That's the problem. Nowhere to put it.
So you're saying that you think that the Army Corps will clear most of the lots faster than a private debris removal unless you move on it, fast, basically.
Well, I don't think that. First of all, I'm not sure that the Army Corps of Engineers is even positioned in any way, shape, or form to clear the lots that are complicated, all the hillside lots,
right?
And lots
Correct.
Of pools. So those are going to take specialty companies like Southland and Tudor Perini and whatever. There's Truck Tech or whatever, some of the bigger ones. Mm-hmm. They won't be able to do that anyway, and they're not on the schedule. And they are quoting a year to 18 months. People, that has been real math since day one. Everybody wants it to be different, but if you've only got, 12, 13 contractors out there that are big enough to do that work, and you have to clear 10,000 sites, and you have to remove 1,650,000 trucks of debris, which again is what I think it is, it's not enough people. There's not enough days. How many trucks do you think you could load on a small street in a day? You're talking about a year and a half. So private contractors makes more sense to me, which I didn't, I said everybody opt in. But if you don't have major movement by the end of March, opt out, because that money will go to the Army Corps of Engineers, whether you pay for it yourself. And by the way, a year is the same amount of money as spending $150,000 removing your debris, because not being able
So you're saying, so when you say your insurance is going to the Army Corps anyway, that you lose the option of using private debris removal if you don't opt out by March 31st.
You lose the insurance money for debris removal, and if you decide to not go with the Army Corps of Engineers, your insurance goes with the Army Corps of Engineers.
So the Army Corps will take your insurance even if they don't clear your lot?
That is correct. You don't opt out.
Wow.
Yeah. And a year and a half of paying your mortgage or whatever it is, it's worth most likely more than $150,000.
That's correct. And in all fairness to the Army Corps of Engineers, if they're mobilizing based on a number, right? So if they're told it's 10,000, then they're going to have a lot more trucks and a lot more stuff. It doesn't mean it's going to go any faster because of the congestion. So the reason they want to keep your insurance is because they mobilized.
The congestion is a real problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to talk about the debris removal again, this seems to me like the bottleneck right now is that they are not deploying enough private companies while they can. There's not, right now there's not a huge effort by the Army Corps yet. You see a lot here, you see a lot there. We could have been clearing for weeks already at this point, yet there is still no process for the private debris. There's no landfills that will take it.
It's where the debris goes. There was the huge hearing last night or the before.
Yeah.
So our landfills are as mismanaged as our forests, right? They're full. And to get a new landfill in California is a 10-year process if you even got it. So the debris needs to leave California, and that's 4 hours. And it needs to be by railroad so that it can be crushed and separated. They need to do a temporary dispatch or depot to do the debris so that you just load it in a truck, drive it out of here, and separate it somewhere else. Because the only other way to do it is to create some place here to crush and compress it. And that's just not something that the Palisades is going to let you do. I mean, imagine huge machinery that's designed it's like a chipper for debris, where you just start throwing it in there, and it spits
where
out.
Do you put that? Now,
and then after the truck and gets covered. Ideally, you'd have a 40 ton truck instead of a 10-ton truck, but you can't get those trucks in on the roads because it's small and it's quaint, and this is residential, and this is not clearing the bottom of the World Trade Centers. This is clearing, individual home lots, and you don't want to destroy everybody's personal property and private property. I really feel like we are just pretty far away from we're a year away from having it cleared, even if we're organized, and even if there are more contractors, because you have to move the debris out of California. Ultimately, that's what's going to come down to.
So Elaine alluded to. She's talking about a vote that happened at the county board earlier this week, 5-0, to expand the amount of debris that the landfills are allowed to take. And that was even after the protests in Calabasas. Somebody sent me a video of Kourtney Kardashian.
Wait.
Yes, go ahead.
It was to expand the amount of trucks per day.
Trucks per day, okay.
The quantity of trucks per day. When it's full, it's full. But it was more trucks per day.
So it's pretty close to full.
And right now, so in order for you to put debris into a truck and drive it there and unload it, you have to be in the haul route. It's called a haul route. They have a haul route hearing, and they say, okay, how many yards of dirt, how many yards of debris are you going to, who's your contractors, these 5 people, whatever. And we need 1,500 trucks. And they say, okay, it's 1,500 trucks, let them go. A private contractor cannot go to that dump and dump their stuff if they're not in the MATOC. It's an ECC dump contract. So your private contractor cannot go. I just was questioned at a dump Monday morning from a job in Mulholland Drive. It's not in the fire, just debris that was leaving. They went to the dump. It was drywall and whatever were drywall. And they're like, where did it come from? And they wanted an origin. They want origin and destination. Before the fires, that wasn't an issue. We don't have a haul route there because we're just doing trash debris like leftover. We don't need one. But if you do have a hauling route, which this does, the dumper has to be on the haul route. Private contractors don't have one. And good luck getting one if there's no landfill.
All right. So this is obviously something that we're going to need to talk about a lot more, whether Oren is satisfied or not. It's just such a huge topic.
I would like some answers on it, and I've asked, and I'm not getting any. And Karen Bass doesn't know because they don't know this business.
So Elaine, what would you do?
Exactly.
What would you do if you were like the debris?
I would contract with a landfill outside of California, maybe Nevada or in the desert somewhere, a big landfill by railroad. It'd have to be by railroad, and I would create a temporary transit facility and just let them go out there with no hauling route hearing. Just send them as many as you can and let them deal with it there. Make a different problem there that that you're paying them for. Pay them to take it. It's
Right.
good business for them. They have bigger landfills. They're not full. That gives the railroad business. They can cart it further. They can do actual recycling and debris separation and crunching. They can make structural composite materials and all kinds of different things out of the debris. We can't do that. We're not equipped to.
So it doesn't sound like a complicated solution. Why doesn't anybody in the city, in the county, just like pick it up and say, hey, you know what? Let's solve it like this, and let's solve the issue for these 10,000 people. What do you think the issue is?
I think that there's, obviously a lack of know-how. I think Karen Bass's hire of Steve Soberoff was an effort to find somebody who knows how, but it just wasn't the right guy. And I'm pretty sure that they asked I know for a fact they asked some people who do know how, but they were turned away. And the reason they were turned away is because the people that know how to do it have worked under many a MATOC and understand the gravity of the business and know that Karen Bass has no power at all when it comes to FEMA, zero, has no money because our state has been gutted, zero, and has no power. They have no power because if you don't have money, you have no power. And then on top of it, you have no know-how. You don't know how to do it.
So no money, no know-how.
That's right. No money, no know-how, no power.
No power. So, and we're left off with debris over here for the next year or year and a half because of this. And the solution, again, like we can send them a clip. I can edit the clip, send them the clip of these 10 seconds of what you offered. It doesn't sound so complicated to get it done.
It doesn't. Well, MATOC ends. So the ECC MATOC ends. So this is a Biden MATOC. This isn't a Trump MATOC. And that one ends I think end of March. And I do think there is some hope on the horizon because, first of all, Trump's the infrastructure guy. I do think that there'll be a new MATOC, there'll be new contractors, bigger contractors, and there'll probably be better and more FEMA participation when it's a Trump MATOC and not a Biden MATOC.
All right, let's leave that for now and we'll see. But again, the great idea, find a way to get the debris to Nevada where they have more room and everybody can benefit. Let's talk about Measure ULA or Measure ULA. So this was a ballot initiative that passed. I think it had 57% of the vote in the city of Los Angeles in 2022. And essentially, if you sell a piece of property that's worth over $5 million in the transaction, you have to pay a tax to the city. I think the tax rises once you hit a higher threshold. I think it's supposed to be 10 million. These thresholds get higher over time. So now I think it's 5.1 million. It could be a little bit higher than that. But basically, this is a tax, and the revenue from the tax is supposed to fund housing for homeless people and to help low-income residents find housing, basically to make housing more available in Los Angeles. Now, I reported on this when they first started implementing it, and I think it began on April 1st, 2023. And there was this mad rush to sell property before April 1st. And then on April 1st, the market just stopped. Nobody was selling anything in LA above $5 million after April 1st. But let's talk to Elaine about that because, Elaine, you know about Measure ULA. So explain the impact it's had, positive, negative, otherwise, on real estate in LA. Have they been able to help unhoused people, homeless people, whatever? And will it help or hurt the rebuilding of the Pacific Palisades in Malibu?
Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with ULA, you're certainly familiar with mansion tax, which is what they so craftfully called ULA. And they ran an initiative to get ULA to pass under the guise that millionaires and billionaires should pay their share. They can certainly afford to help out homeless people. We need to have a mansion tax. It was never fully disclosed to the people that voted for it. So that's just set that aside for a minute, put that in a bucket. It was a sham the way that they ran that tax, which, by the way, happens a lot on these initiatives where they're just not completely clear. It's so confusing. So set that aside for a second. In addition to that, they didn't explain that it wasn't one kind of real estate. It was transactional. So it doesn't matter the bucket of real estate. For example, in the Pacific Palisades, if your lot is just land, it's just a lot, so it's just raw land, it is subject to mansion tax if it is over $5 million, even if your house burned off of it. And the tax is a flat tax, so you pay it on other taxes that you already pay, on the commissions that you pay, on your title costs, on your escrow costs, on your loan. It's not an equity tax. It's a flat transactional tax, like a sales tax. It's supposed to replace transfer tax, but they don't want to say that because Proposition 13 protects transfer tax and keeps it low. Proposition 13, which is one of the greatest things, I know a lot of people, aren't sure about it, but it really is fantastic. And it's been around since 1979, and there have been a million different attacks on Prop 13, over it, under it, through it, around it. They've tried and never been successful until this happened.
Proposition 13 basically limits the increase in the property tax in California. So
you have when you buy your piece of property, that is your basis. 1.25. It's actually really 1%, but it's 1.25 with all the other taxes. That's your base. Now, if you improve on your property, you can get retagged for your improvement of your property, but only your improvement, not your land base. They can't just raise the cost of your property. This was the only way to get around it. And the idea was they were going to try to clip somewhere around 5% of the overall market. And their number was between 900 million and 1.1 billion. So you do the math on how much real estate transacts in Los Angeles if they were only after 5%. And so let's just say it's, 35 to 45 billion a year. Now it's 10% of that, 20% of that, depending on the category. It's frozen. The reason that it's frozen is because Los Angeles real estate over 5 million and over 10 million, these people are not potted plants. They're not stupid, and they just held on to their real estate any way they could. In most cases, they couldn't afford it. And there was lots of hoopla that it was going to get turned over, so that bought a whole nother year of not moving. But during that year, escrow companies weren't working, title companies weren't working, inspections, developers, planning department, new construction, because when a market doesn't trade, everything around it falls off. Real estate brokers, real estate agents, young people trying to buy homes, people that were trying to do if you're a multifamily real estate developer, you're already doing 10% of your inventory in low income. You get charged on that too, because it's transactional. So you're paying twice. So those, instead of what it was.
Wait a minute. So if you're developing low income housing, you're also going to be taxed to pay for low income housing. You're doing what they want you to do.
It's unbelievable. Even if you're just a regular developer in California, you have to do 10% low income anyway, over 10 units. So you're already paying for that.
Right. Okay.
And this tax is you just paid again.
So how do you think this will impact the rebuild?
Well, obviously, if you take away this constraint, if you take the chains off of the ankles, right, people start to move around again, and real estate starts to trade. And what happens when real estate trades? People sell their houses, and there's vacancies. People buy land because they can make money, and they start to build. And all of a sudden, the problem of having 100,000 people without a house starts to look completely different, because things start to move. And that market will put far more dollars into the Los Angeles city market than not doing it would ever do, times 10. I would argue times 10. I mean, real estate market's off at a minimum of 70%. Yeah. The real estate brokers that do high-end residential, who will never say the market is off, will tell you. I talked to Billy Rose last week. I said, what do you think? And he said 50%. They're the biggest real estate brokers. The prices are not going down. People are just not trading. And if you stop trading at Wall Street, what happens? Stock crashes. People are not going to buy or sell that have a choice.
The issue here is something that we talked about last episode around the penalty they put on price gouging, around the insurance issue and why insurance companies are fleeing. It's the people that are making these laws have clearly never worked in the private sector and have never been part of the real estate market. So, and they're just making these rules in a vacuum, thinking that they're going to help. I'm not going to say that they're doing malicious, but they're doing the opposite. And so it's like you said, they're putting the chain on the ankle. It's inhibiting the market. It's having the counter effect to everything that they wanted to have in the first place. So less money for the homeless and for other good causes.
I mean, if I were Gavin Newsom, instead of doing a podcast, I would put ULA on hiatus. You want to help?
That podcast is going to become such a punching bag, you know. Instead of doing a podcast, why doesn't he do X or Y? I mean, he's inviting it because...
If I was Karen Bass, I wouldn't be running around trying to figure out how to get rid of trash. I would be down at the building department trying to figure out how I'm going to issue permits immediately. You know, and if I were Karen Bass, I would go to you know, Gavin Newsom and say, look, at ULA needs to go. We need to open up the floodgates for real estate to trade. We need people to feel encouraged to build. You know, people don't want to invest in a state or an economy where they have no idea if they're going to be able to keep their investment. They blindsided the city of Los Angeles in the real estate world with this thing. Because
it's interesting. You know, the median price right now, I think, for a lot in Pacific Palisades, there have been, I think, about 20 lots that have sold or that have come on the market, something like that. I think the median price is something like $2.6 million. And if you talk about building a house now on an empty lot or one that has rubble on it, needs to be removed, whatever, you're talking about adding, I don't know, how much is a house worth by itself without the land? Let's say a nice 4-bedroom house or something.
Well, 3,000 square foot with these prices, at least, I don't know.
7 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're easily over the limit. I mean, your home now is over the limit, and it's hard to sell if you want to sell it. Not that people want to sell. People in the Palisades don't want to sell. They want to rebuild their homes, live in their homes. But ultimately, it is an investment, and
it incentivizes the entire market.
Right. How do you rebuild something you know you're going to pay a massive tax on if and when you do have to sell it?
Think about how many people would have traded real estate at full value and how much tax dollars and jobs that would have been had they not had this matching tax the last 2 years.
Right.
You know, a lot of people would have traded real estate.
And how much revenue has it brought in? I saw numbers that suggested half or less than half of what they projected has been brought in by this tax.
20%. It's brought in 20. It's brought in $423 million in 2.5 years.
Not very much.
Not anywhere what they expected. They expected between 900 and 1.1 billion per year. That's what they solicited. That's what they sold. And with that money, you would think that the NGOs that it's going to, which is what they are for the homeless people, would have had business plans that would have required X amount of dollars based on their estimations. Like, are they able to just continue to work with no money? Or are they just going to take whatever they can get because they're spending it any way they want? I mean, it does bode the question. What is the deal? Why are they able to continue if it's unsuccessful?
Well, last year, I think at the end, the LA City Council voted to spend $100 million of the money they collected on something called social housing, which I hadn't actually heard of before. It sounds kind of like a co-op where the tenants basically buy their building and then they run it. I'm not sure how it works. Do you know anything about that? I mean, it sounded kind of weird.
No, I mean, I read exactly what you read, and that they were talking about cooperative housing, essentially like a co-op. But I mean, are these people that are homeless that are unemployed going to be able to run an apartment building?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question.
Lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of maintenance, and, you know, there's a lot
I mean,
of
people with jobs have enough trouble. If you've ever had to deal with an HOA, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, God forbid they have to through insurance if that something happens.
Yeah.
Are they going to have insurance? Who's going to pay their insurance? I thought the federal case that I read on it that's now an appeal was really interesting because that took an interesting position.
Wait, hold on. So this is the challenge. There are legal challenges against Measure ULA.
Yeah, I like
in the state court and the federal court.
Well, the one I like the most is the one that says, well, wait a second, why is the city of LA paying for all the homeless people from all over the United States and in Riverside and everywhere else? Why do we have to pay for it? Hold on a minute. I mean, are we not encouraging homeless? Like, come to LA. They're going to just pay. They're going to give you 5% of their sales.
100%. I have been amazed every time we raise the sales tax to pay for more homeless services. The first time they did it in 2014, I remember going to the polls and voting against it and thinking, I'm sure my fellow voters are going to realize that if you offer more services, you get more homeless people. I mean, it's just the most obvious thing to me. Nope. Raise the taxes by like...
qualify.
What's that?
I wonder if we qualify now.
as homeless people.
Aren't we in the category that we should have the funds returned?
The podcast
Yeah.
definitely qualifies. Yeah.
I think like you guys should be trying to collect.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
we're here to collect, and we are actually in Los Angeles.
All right. So they have these court cases, and they're finding their way through the courts, although I saw that the federal case was thrown out. They're appealing that. It's going to be heard at the Ninth Circuit, state courts, and so on. I mean, it's a long legal battle. There is the option of having some kind of ballot measure, but last year I think the state Supreme Court kicked it off the ballot for some reason. I'm still getting into the legal ins and outs of this whole thing. But what can be done about Measure ULA? Is it just to wait until the courts decide, or what are we going to do about it?
Well, I think in a parallel lane that has to happen, and we have to support all of those, lawsuits and the people that are filing.
Howard Jarvis, Taxpayers Association, and some of the other groups.
Yeah, Susan Shelley, incredible. What a great group. And they're hard at it all the time. And they've really protected, they're sort of the gatekeepers of Proposition 13. So if this is very, very upsetting to them because they've really spent, their entire body of work is protecting that thing, and they should. And we should all be very grateful for that. So the question is, what else can we do? Well, I mean, the obvious thing is to try to get an emergency ordinance passed because of the damage and the wildfires and the amount of people that have paid into that tax that are actually directly affected that are now currently without a home. I think it's almost the humane thing to do. I think that the tax is an illegal tax, and I think that the tax is unconstitutional, and I think a lot of things. But what I think the most about it is it doesn't work. It was unsuccessful. And if something is unsuccessful, and then you have this kind of a catastrophe, and something like this would just at least display some goodwill on behalf of our governor, who I think is just absolutely head in the sand, completely resilient to what's going on around him for some reason. He's not focused on California. I don't understand it. And I don't understand what he's saying. I think I listened to you, Joel, the other day. Did you not ask him 2 questions and he took the long way around to, I don't know? And
Yeah, I asked him why he was spending $50 million to fight Trump while also asking Trump for $40 billion. I mean, how does that work?
A very good question.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I want to ask Donald Trump, and I want to ask him myself to add one more condition to the funding for FEMA for our, big fight ahead of us. I would like there to be turn on the water, which is not so simple, but he's right, it can be done. Voter ID and abolish ULA. And I think that abolishing ULA will be the most popular of the 3 immediately, and it will be the most effective, and it will jumpstart the market, and it will help these people that can't help themselves because they'll have some extra income. I'm a developer. We're lucky if we get 8%. If you come and take 5% of it, there's absolutely no reason to do it. You have to pass that cost on. You're going to either pass it on in rent, or you're going to pass it on in the sale, or you're going to pass it on.
Right, and what everyone complains about in LA is the high price of rent, and that's why you get people who vote for Measure ULA because they think, oh yeah, let's make housing more affordable. But of course,
let's go ahead and double tax. Building
once people know they're going to have to pay a tax, they raise the rent so they can pay the tax if they sell the building. So the rents are going up anyway, more than they would have.
That's right. And if you add the metric of that tax to rents, it calculates differently than when you add it to high-end residential real estate. Because rents, when rent sales happen, they're based on how many rents you have and what kind of rents they are and how long that they've been rented and when are they coming up, and they have cap rates. So if you have this kind of a tax on an exit, then it deeply affects the value of the property, period. In high-end residential real estate, it's a little bit different because that's comped in a completely different way. That's based on sales. So it affects it completely because most of those sales didn't have that tax. So people were more inclined to come down off the price a little bit. So it might appear you're asking too much for your property when you add 5% more to cover your costs. It's just, It's an egregious, illegal tax that does not work. It should be part of the request from Donald Trump to ask that it is abolished. It is abolished, an emergency measure to have it removed.
So far, I've got a question just to harken back to the rebuild. We talked about Karen Bass, and you stated that she's like probably ineffectual because she's powerless, in, at least on these stages of the rebuild. Then we have Gavin Newsom, who's, we all know kind of like that he's ineffectual. Is there a federal level do you think that can become involved, that actually has power on the rebuild, versus the kind of like cast of thousands we have right now, where everybody's just passing blame and we still don't have even a debris dump site? Like, is there a federal angel that can be sent, that like somebody like a czar, like with actual power, that can work at the local level? Would that be effectual?
I think if we're going to get a new MATOC at the end of March, and President Trump has to approve the money to come here, I think he made it pretty clear in that meeting with Karen Bass that he wouldn't just send the money here, that there would be a dollar of the money. Now, under the FEMA rules, there is, usually someone in the MATOC, which is ECC, and they may be re-upped. I mean, they're not a clog in the wheel, so to speak. Their job is to distribute those funds and pick those contractors. But a czar, if there's so many contractors, and ECC is not a construction company, you need Ron Tudor, you need a Tudor Perini, you need Frank Redna, you need Southland, you need people who do this every single day that are logistics people. It's a logistics job. And, I'm sure there are plenty of people within each of these groups that are really, really good, but there's only a handful of Ron Tudors in the world. There's just not very many of them that can, see empty space full and understand how to actually get it out.
Right.
And the problem with, doing business in California, and I'm sure Ron Tudor will say, look what they're doing with the high-speed rail. Okay. So the high-speed rail is, another story of don't kill the messenger. A guy like Ron Tudor or Tudor Perini or, any big company that comes and bids that, they bid it with multiple bids. Multiple people bid to get that kind of work. And you come up with a price to do it, and you start and you mobilize, and then your funding stops. And then you get audited and they blame the builder, when the builder hasn't been able to work because the funding has never come through. In fact, most of the funding has gone to oppositional groups to fight it. This is the way that California has operated. So it's going to be very hard to get a really big contractor in here unless it's federal, because they don't want to work here under the Gavin Newsom administration and have their funding cut after they've already mobilized.
So let's talk about alternatives. And the mention of Karen Bass, Ron, you brought her up again. It's a good segue to talking about Rick Caruso, who ran against her in 2022. And he has been speaking out against how she's responded to the fire. And he's got this nonprofit. We've talked about it before, Steadfast LA. They introduced these prefabricated homes for people who want to move onto their land, can't afford to rebuild yet, but want to live at least in some kind of decent condition. And Steadfast LA is his project. Now, I have actually invited him on the show. He hasn't said yes yet, but we'll get him in the end. I do think he'll eventually come on. Steve Soberoff also declined, so we'll keep trying. But Elaine, you had a really interesting theory about what Rick Caruso is trying to do with Steadfast LA. It's not just there to show how he could be a better mayor or even a governor or whatever, but there's actually a plan for the Palisades, perhaps even Malibu area. Tell us your theory.
Well, he understands the financial constraints of the city of Los Angeles and the disorganization. He certainly understands the building department and the resources there and how limited they are. And I'm sure you guys have noticed, you three homeless men, that there's a lot of manly man poles on PCH that are put in by DWP. The above ground power poles. Every one of them was changed out. It's a couple hundred.
Oh yeah, someone was complaining about them to me this evening at the Little League baseball game, how ugly they are. But it looks like they're going to be up there forever, because how are they going to remove them and put the wires underground again?
They were all there before. They replaced the ones that were there.
Right.
We just got used to them because they were wooden, and manly mans don't rot. And they also had them in stock because wooden power poles have been gone for a while. So the inventory that they had was those. And what I want to say about DWP, first of all, is they killed it. I mean, they moved their butts, all of them. There's had to be 3,000 people up there. They were so awesome. And same with the gas company and getting things somewhat restored in the Palisades so that they could work and have lights on at night and make sure that the place was safe. I thought they did a great job. But part of the reason they did a great job is because PCH was closed and there was no oversight whatsoever. They were able to just work and roll. And in an emergency, the red tape and the bureaucracy really get in the way. And the cost of building something in California is, so much higher than it is in places where they have outside planning, and you can buy planning separately, and then you just go through kind of a staff level planning at the city, which makes it go much faster. So you prepare all your plans, all your structural, all everything, and then you don't go through these like oversight inside of the city, but rather you just go and let them check, it's okay, and they give you the permit. And the trusted planners that are hired are, retired planners and people that are licensed to be hired privately. So you can buy someone to help you expedite the program, but they don't do that here. You still have to submit here and go through the process, and then you have all these oversight. So Rick Caruso sees a very big opportunity, which we should all see. I do too, for different reasons. And that is that a private-public partnership would be a lot easier to control. It would be easy to get funding, and there's an opportunity to do it quickly because they're going to remove some of the environmental constraints, possibly CEQA, and even maybe do only city coastal, not full-blown coastal, because we have 2 coastal commissions in most of the Palisades. So he sees that. So what is he going to do? Well, he's got a limited amount of time. And if he does private-public partnership, what that is a private company. You've all been on a toll road. You know what a toll road is, right? Toll roads. So toll roads are really good private-public partnership. Most toll roads in the United States are private-public partnerships. So someone else comes in and builds the toll roads. They get the job. And that is private money. And then that private company gets paid back the interest on that plus a profit. And then at say 30 years, those private toll roads then revert back to the state. Private-public partnership. Some people don't like it because they don't trust it. But when you have an inept government and you have complete quagmire and no resources and not enough people and not enough trained and skilled people in the field, that's really one of the only alternatives. And then if you have a trusted guy like Rick Caruso running it, who's beyond competent, he also has a very high level of expectation. I mean, he likes things done properly. He's the perfect guy to do a private-public partnership. I would invest in it. And in 30 years, those streets, everything will be underground and everything will be filled and beautiful, and it'll all revert back to the city. And all the residents there will get a break on their taxes or break on their utilities, and they'll probably have a better deal than they would if they had the city do it. And bear in mind that our property tax, there's assessment districts, there's all kinds of ways to collect money. Our property tax is for 3 things. It's for schools and police. Schools, police and fire, and infrastructure and roads. And so if you don't have any roads and your schools are closed and you can't and you're defunding the police and you can't get a fire truck down your street, what are we paying property tax for? And so the best thing to do is maybe do an assessment district or private-public partnership where you take that money away from the city because they have misspent it, and you put it together properly, and then you return it back to the city after it's all paid for. So it's not mismanaged.
How does the revenue work there? So the city delivers the tax revenue to the private company that's organizing this neighborhood or this town, and then where does the city get paid back?
Well, the city has to release all of the streets and roads and infrastructure and everything from their tax roll. They have to. They can't. They're not going to manage it. They're not going to do anything. You can still use DWP to do the installations, but under private-public partnership, under bid. And by the way, if I want to build something like my own home, I'm supposed to be able to build it on my lot with all my plumbing, my water, my drainage, my gas, everything there plumbed to my curb. But in California, if you're a developer and that isn't built properly, then they ask you to participate in that on the road. And with all of the roads, especially up in Castellamar and some of the other places where there's been landslides or there's been fires historically, those things would be great to do as assessment districts. An assessment district is where the county assessor pays for it on a loan. And then after it's all done and complete, everything gets assessed based on what its value is after it's complete. And there's caps and restrictions. And then you just start paying property tax again, and it pays back all the reconstruct. And that should be a no-brainer. Especially up in Castellamar, where people are driving around on half-baked roads with water pouring all over the place. Why wouldn't they do an assessment district?
So what do you say to people? I spoke to somebody today who suggested that Castlemar and Sunset Mesa, for example, unincorporated areas, should be annexed by Malibu. What do you think about that idea?
Annexing? I mean, I don't think that Malibu, has. I mean, I wouldn't say Malibu's doing it any better anyway.
I tend to agree.
Malibu, they're bound by Coastal Commission probably harder than anyone else. I mean, the Malibu Building Department is notorious for dragging projects on forever and ever. And private-public partnership isn't that popular in this democratic, state, but it's pretty popular in a lot of the Republican states.
Wait, so I want to just make sure I understand how it works. I mean, there's a town that Disney owned or used to own. I think it's called Centennial or Centurion or something. It's in Florida, and Disney basically runs the town. It's almost like a company town, really, where the company owns everything in town. And it was built to feel like this idyllic American town. Celebration, that's what it's called. Celebration. And are we going to be like that? Because one of my neighbors said, well, if Rick Caruso rebuilds the Palisades, it'll be like Disneyland. It'll feel like the Village Mall everywhere. It's not going to have that appealing clash of styles that we recognize from the old Palisades.
I might have missed the old Palisade kids all bumbling around, how chaotic it used to be.
My 9-year-old said, Dad, I know Palisades wasn't perfect, but I loved it the way it was. That's kind of what people are going to miss. And, we know that some things are going to change as we rebuild, but does it basically become Rick Caruso's private company? I mean, we're basically all now...
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. No, not at all. And I don't think Rick Caruso, I mean, he's a developer. He's definitely going to look for deals to upscale. But, look, I'm in a situation too where, I'm not sure if my property is worth more or less. Who knows? But I know one thing's for sure. I'm not going to sell anything. I wouldn't do it because of mansion tax. So my job right now is to buy, right? Because I'm a developer. So I double down. That's what developers do. We double down. It's what we're supposed to do. Otherwise, we would just be bankers. Okay. Developers double down, bankers pull back. So my job right now is to buy. And why? Because there's going to be opportunities. And does that make me an opportunist? I don't know. But I mean, I hate that. I hate the idea of that. But someone's got to buy these lots.
So what kind of advice you can give people, like we were talking about it in the last episode, people that are debating if to sell their place, not to sell their lot, they don't know how long it will take, they don't know how if they have enough, for us instance, like we don't know if we have enough money to like continue renting from the insurance for like 3-4 years. I know I can take it for like 2-3 years, but if it's becoming 3-4 years, then the question is, okay, 3-4 years might end up like 5 years. You have to pay your mortgage, you have to pay your, either you buy another house or you continue renting. What kind of advice, like for a lot of people in the Palisade don't have like the houses of like, the $10-20 million and they have other houses. A lot of them is like people that living there for 30 years, 40 years, older people. What's the advice you would give them?
Well, geez, that's a big, huge question. I mean, first of all, there's lots of categories, right? I mean, if you're in your 70s or your 80s, it's very challenging. I mean, it's not just the energy, but it's your years of relaxing, and it's a lot of work to build a home. But if you're young and you lose your home and you have insurance, you have to find a way to turn that around, because it's your job to persevere that experience and come out. It's not how you handle things that go well, it's how you handle things that go bad. That's your. So I think for young people, raising a family, even if it's not your level of expertise, it's your journey. It's an adventure, and you shouldn't let your wealth go up in smoke because it's too much work. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So, I would say young people should get in there and fight the fight and rebuild. I think if you're, not married to the Palisades and you don't have the passion for it that the people that have been here a long time do, then that's another reason that you might want to sell, and that's okay. But I mean, if you're passionate about the Palisades and you bandwidth and the age and the stamina to be able to show your family, your kids, your young kids, look what we did. We lost our house and we built it back, and look at how great it is. I mean, what a great example for your kids. Like, I'm loud and proud about that. I tell my kids, like, no, it's the bad time and the good time, they're all the same time. It's just all part of the whole thing. Don't get all down. Don't get down. It happens to everybody. And so, and I'm on the back end of my career. I'm doing a lot more consulting and enjoying myself and thinking more about politics and things that I can do to help my community and stuff like that. But like, I'll be damned if I'm going to let this get me down. No, I'm going to help everybody that I can. And my houses are saved for a reason. I assume that's to help people. And I think what would be very helpful for people to decide would be if the city of Los Angeles would get their shit together and start the issuance of permits that are 10 years old. Anything that's after what's called the baseline hillside ordinance, just print them, stick them in a box, and tell the people to just come pick them up. And let them just go straight to work. Just say, if your property is 10 years old, you got an over-the-counter approval, go back, and then pick up whatever's been lost on inspections. Because those plans are digital, those plans are already approved under the baseline hillside ordinance. Nothing major has changed code-wise. Those are the people that also have either bought a home or built in the last 10 years. So they at least have some idea what it's going to cost and what's involved. And if you jumpstart the high end of the market like that, the $1,500 a square foot market, which is the last 10 years, if you jumpstart that part of the market, that's momentum. And it's always important to have momentum. Because once people see that people are building, then that gives people encourages other people to do it. Right now, we're just stuck because there's no information, and that's what the problem is. And that's why I would like very much for Karen Bass to sit down with me, and I'm going to help her be productive. I'm going to take her to the building department and say, what can we do? These are all the things that we could do. These are all the things that have stayed the same.
If she calls you tomorrow and tell you, come, sit next to me and walk me in the next, walk with me in the next 6 months. Would you do it?
I would walk through every step of it with her until she understood it. I would help her. She needs help. I doubt she's built a $10 million house with the building department in Los Angeles in the Palisades on a hill. I seriously doubt she's done anything like that, let alone thousands of them.
That's what I asked in the last episode. I asked, I wonder if somebody from the city is literally sitting in front of the computer trying to pull a permit. If the person that is sitting on the other side, did he ever try to sit in front of it and say, okay, now 10,000 people are needing to pull a permit? Did he ever do it? Do somebody understand how complicated it is to do it?
It's so complicated. We should set up I was going to set up, this was my idea, to set up a center at the library, what did they call it? The rec building where they have everybody.
Rec center, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to set up a center there with Department of Water and Power, with all of the equipment you need, and you just come in and you give them the address, and they look up your last 10-year permit, and they just issue them right there. And they say, call for inspection when you're ready. And you have your contractor and your architect, and you could call back your old architect and contractor. And, for me, that just seems like the simplest thing to do, right? It's so easy, and it's so now, and all of those people. And also, if any one of these people sells their lots without their entitlements, they're not worth anything anyway.
Right.
And a long period of time lapses, and you don't get those permits, you're going to lose your entitlements, and now you've got nothing. So somebody's got to do this right now, and I don't think that's that difficult. And by the way, I think that the city would be burden-free too if you just issue those permits.
I think it's a great idea. I think everybody, there's professional people behind all of those permits. And as long as the trades sign off on it, your engineer signs off, your GC signs off, all the different permits, the foundation folks sign off, there's no reason to put a blocker here for something that could delay us a really long time, and we're going to end up in the same place anyways. And like you said, if people start seeing momentum and, even on cleared lots, that's important right now. We want to be seeing cleared lots every day. I still see the same one lot that somehow somebody cleared. I don't know how, driving down every day. And it's annoying because we know that it's going to cascade down to other things. If we don't start moving on this fast, then we are going to be in a 3, 4, 5-year rebuild, which is nobody wants. Everybody wants to get back into their homes. So I love the idea, and I think Karen Bass should call you, but that's just me.
Yeah,
but she call me. She knows I'm upset with her. I haven't been, exactly kind about it, but I don't think it's okay to Well, listen, the fire chief did not put 1,000 trucks on the spot, Johnny on the spot. She sent a lot of people home. She's culpable too. But firing her was not the right move. And I mean, there's always going to be, like, right now we need all the good men. We need everybody. We don't need anybody gone.
I can tell you, I can just like to talk about this issue again. Is like, I think a lot of people are having a problem rebuilding psychologically and going back, knowing that the same people are in charge, and nothing has changed.
By the way, that's the same even if you're not rebuilding. I mean, I feel the same, and I have a house still standing that I can't go into. But yeah, you just like, I cannot believe I'm going to put my fate and my family's financial future in the hands of the same people.
The Palisades is an incredible place. We all know it. That's why we're here. However, the world's a big place. Okay, so like if you're right now, we're homeless and we're having this discussion in my family, and I think many, many other families, you can go anywhere you want. You know, I can go to Florida. I can go to, move out of country, go somewhere else. You know, in a place where I don't have to fight the city to like rebuild my house for the next 5 years. Like that might also be not a bad option. Now we've made a decision to stay and build, but it's very important that that there's a momentum change, like you said, and that there's also like people can see a future where it's more, it's less bureaucratic, more efficient. You know, and I love the idea of the PPP, the public-private. Just, you know, if people aren't familiar, like the biggest public-private in the U.S. is, I believe, Hudson Yards in New York. It's a democratic state. It's done phenomenally well. It's given back, I think, 300 million more than originally budgeted back to the state in tax money every year.
Between the High Line and Hudson Yard and Uber, New York, like for a while there, was one of the greatest places ever.
Correct.
I was like, I'm loving it. And
yeah, the High Line's pretty cool. That's an old
Airbnb and started to like get up in everybody's business.
Yeah, the old subway, or actually elevated train that you can walk on now. It's really nice.
It's so cool. It's so pretty and neat. But I mean, again, like they ruined the Airbnb business. Like, what is that? You know, that's what I'm saying. People don't want to invest if you're going to rip the rug. Like,
right.
We have to. We don't even have workforce housing anymore in California. You want people to farm and run oils things and do all. Nobody wants to go down there and invest and hire.
Forget about it. Manufacturing. I'm in the manufacturing business. It's like so hard to get like people to live over here. They want to build a house. They want to get a house. It's impossible over here. It's not safe. It's expensive.
We have grants for small business here. We have to do meets. We have to meet every dollar that someone puts in a small business. We have to give tax incentives to people's companies to come back. We've run business out of the state. Gavin Newsom has one job, and that's to make sure we're all safe. And that is his job. Make sure we are all safe, happy, living the life, you know? And that includes having revenue coming into the state. No revenue, the only place you can get it is from your citizens, your taxpayers.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. I have a compounder that's working for me, and he came to me like a couple of months ago, and he's like, "Listen, Owen, I'm moving out. I'm moving to Texas." I'm like, "Why? Why are you moving to Texas?" And the guy's like, it's a big guy with tattoos, you know. It's not like and he said, "I'm moving out. It's not safe here. You know, I'm starting. My kids are growing up. When I came here like a few years ago, like 20 years ago." When he moved from Mexico and he did everything on the legal side, it was safe here. I could run on the street when I grew up. Now I don't feel safe having my kids grow up over here. He's getting like a very nice salary, and he's not going to be able to buy a house in the next like 5 to 10 years. So I have one less employee right now. And I have way less employees. Like if I need like way more, it's impossible to work over here. I love manufacturing. I love doing this business, but it's so hard. It's like somebody's pushing you out of the state in terms of like manufacturing. And now I feel that somebody's pushing you out of California, like the Palisade. I believe like we talked about it the last episode. I believe that 50% of the people are not going to stay in the Palisade. A lot of them are going to.
No way.
No way?
No. No way.
I think that's
Look,
like.
I think we ended up on the fact that 50% are not going to end up living in their original house. They might trade lots, they might rebuild, but like maybe half and half of that. So like,
look, this is one administration that is in the way of true happiness in California, and this will pass. This too will pass. California's been around a long time, and it's just kind of now the rubbers hit the road. The wheels are falling off the bus. It's just a matter of time before not just the administration changes, but the culture changes back to the way it used to be. You know.
Well, we have an election year coming up, so maybe we should get some guests on who might run for office. But we are running short of time. Yeah, go ahead. Last word.
I think you're right about that.
People will step forward.
Change it. And I don't want to be, this is probably one of the most remarkable times to leverage real estate in history. It is truly one of the most remarkable times to leverage real estate in history. People will look back on this 50 years from now and say, oh my God, you know, our family bought this, that, and the other. This house came for sale that had never come for sale in 50 years. You'll watch and see. It'll be one of the most remarkable times to double down is right now. And historically,
I'm with you. I'm doubling down, but I'm talking to
This
people.
is how generational wealth was made. And we can all sit around and cry about it. It is a terrible tragedy, or we can just pick up our bootstraps and get to work. But I'm definitely not leaving. There's no world I'm leaving. I'm not getting kicked out of my state because we have bad management. I'm going to change the management. That's going to be my job, because this state is hard to beat. It's hard to beat weather-wise. It's hard to beat location-wise. It's super cosmopolitan. The people are amazing. It's a fantastic state. The problem is the management of the state, and that is easy to change. You can change management in any company. You just got to get everybody together.
You got to get the right people in there. So, Elaine Culotti, thank you so much for joining us on Three Homeless Guys. For Ron hey, Ron, by the way, let me go to Ron and Oren quickly before we say peace out. If you guys have a last word to say before I do the outroduction.
I mean, let's end on a good note. You know, from a financial perspective, and exactly what Elaine was saying, I really believe, like, you know, let's take this really bad situation that happened to us and make it a positive, like maybe not in the immediate future, but in 5 to 7 years. You know, the old saying, you know, good times, there's fortunes made, but the real fortunes are made when times are bad. And I think like we're heading into this like place from a real estate development, our own families, our own, you know, it's not just about financial wealth, but I think a lot can be done from a positive perspective, raising your families, showing them good lessons, showing them like how to persevere through these awful, you know, events. I think we can all become a lot wealthier than that from that, not just on a financial level, but on all levels. So I'm going to leave it on that note today.
I'll add to it. I think that a lot of innovation can come out. A lot of people, and us among them, are thinking of how to rebuild, how to like improve this industry of like, you know, having a contractor coming to the site and, oh, I forgot this whatever screwdriver, and now everybody waits for him for like 2 hours. So I want to see like I want to see the innovation coming out. Right. You know, Ron is in the construction business for many years, and he told me that like one of the only industries that have never improved with technology is construction. And I really, really hope that you know, what happened to us now with all the brain power that we have can make a change to it.
Elaine, last word.
Oh, I just wanted to say that all the best things are made by hand. So.
Well, there you go. We'll have a virtual handshake then. This has been Three Homeless Guys with Ron Goldschmidt, Oren Ezra, and Elaine Culotti, our very special guest this evening. You can find us at threehomelessguys.com and email us at pod@threehomelessguys.com for your suggestions for future shows. We're up on YouTube and rss.com, all the major podcasting platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to Three Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out threehomelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@threehomelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.